Okay, I've never played Kerbal Space Program before, but I am aware of this game through cultural osmosis. I know that it's rocket science slash aerodynamics physics game, and that the objective is to get to the moon, which is colorfully spelled MUN. Those are all the things I know about it. I've also heard that it's quite hard, pretty big learning curve. I am not an astrophysicist, but my wife is, so she would probably laugh at me for how bad I'm going to be at this game. Although she'd probably also make fun of me for confusing astrophysics with rocket science because those are not the same thing. But we'll see how this goes. I have no conception of like what the core gameplay loop is like. I just imagine that it's 80 hours of not knowing what you're doing until you finally get to land on the moon. I'm not sure if there's like a tutorial or a campaign or something that kind of holds your hand a little bit better on the way there. Let's check it out though. I'm excited to give it a try. Kesslerizing Kerbin. Yeah. I know like Big Bang Theory is pretty uh reasonably hated. It's hated for good reason, but there is a scene in that show I was watching with Andrea where someone refers to an astrophysicist as a rocket scientist, and Andrea and Sheldon simultaneously said, those are completely different things. Hey, thank you, Sailor Dan. Appreciate that. Right. How have you been? So, presumably I need to do training, or can I do play missions? What is the friendliest thing to someone who has no idea what they're doing? Is it training? Oh god. Murder von Kerman. Okay. Even separate from the rocket science aspect, this usually isn't my genre, so hopefully I'll be able to play it. Today's lecture on vessel construction. Build a ship. It's my understanding, yes. Seems like a good soft wind condition. Okay. Out the Kerbal Space Center. I'll give you a quick rundown on how to get around. Guessing, although I think this game does support controller, mouse, and keyboard is recommended. Vehicle assembly, research and development. $85 hours is what I saw in How Long to Beat as the lowest estimate anyone submitted for landing on the moon. It was Dark Doom Bob. Enter vehicle assembly when ready. Parts are placed and craft is constructed. There's a parts toolbox. Command module. Start in the pods tab. Okay. Might need to change the UI scale. I think it's just large enough that it keeps like cutting off the windows on the side of the screen. Yeah, go to How Long to Beat, look at main story, look at the shortest estimate for someone who submitted a time. They said they landed on the moon, gave 85 hours. Arrow keys or right mouse drag. Scroll wheel up and down. Shift scroll wheel. Okay. Reasonable. Like your pilot to be able to make more than one flight, you should have to return safely to the ground. Parachutes are simply to make sure that happens. It can be found in the utility tab, which is one of these. This one. I have to say, this is a really dense tutorial. Do we know, it said something about missions. Do the missions also contain tutorial information? Left click on the parachute. Get to the top. Again, to attach. Right click on the parachute. Good. Is there a zoom in option? Oh, there it is. Shift scroll wheel. Oh God. Move it a bit to the right. I also just like type in a number. Nine kilometers in altitude. In the engines tab. Bottom of the pod. That. Okay. Solid rocket is too powerful for the payload. Burn up on ascent from going too fast, or burn up coming back down. Up the thumper. Okay. That is solid motor. You have rubbish parts to start with. Pick up the flea. Okay. Built the simplest survivable craft. Bottom right, you'll see the staging stack. It's the box with the number 0. Icons for the parachute and engine. Okay. What this shows is that when we activate the next stage, both the engine and the parachute will be triggered. Feels like that's written from the point of view of someone who already understands what this whole thing will look like when it's expanded. Does that mean that there could be other stages that are grouped together that show engine, parachute, and then something else above or below here? Considered funny to open the chute and fire the motor at the same time. It's not going to give you much of a flight. Probably going to have to be very dependent on chat. Separate the engine and chute into 2 stages. I'll serve the 0 stage. The plus button. Okay. I guess this tutorial is unusually dependent on text. Like, I'd expect it to, like, have more, like, highlighting of things, right? Like, when it tells you click on the pods menu for the pods menu to be glowing or something. Or for this to show you what it would look like when the stages were separated out correctly. This makes sense now that I know what it's saying, but the first time I read it, I'm like, what is it talking about? Yeah, too many, click the minus button and the extra ones will go away. Okay, gotcha. Well, sure, but that comes from the point of view of already understanding this game's UI, right? Like, just because there's a parachute and an engine down here, I don't know that that implies that there are multiple things that can stack on this side of the screen. Better tutorial is advertised in Kerbal Space Program 2. Is that coming out really soon? I think I noticed that when I was trying to get this one downloaded. Stage 1, the engine. Stage 0, the chute. Okay. That makes more sense. We have a relatively safe craft. Untitled spacecraft. Okay. Feel free to play around with the parts and techniques I've shown you. Click the red button in the upper right to exit. Try flight basics. SLG creature will be lost when you exit. This is just for playing around. Okay. Basic flight. Space Center Launch Facility. Gene Kerman. Okay, I'm not ready, but being in control of a very chaotic situation. So has this game gotten like iterative updates for like a decade now? Well, not quite a decade, right? 2015. I seem to remember hearing about this when it was in like early access. Pitch, yaw, and roll. Well, I might be able to remember roll. Okay. SWADQE. Okay, that actually makes more sense to my brain. Throttle plus pitch, yaw, and roll are the main controls you need to master for successful crash-free flight. Launch, activate next stage. It's the stage indicator in the lower left corner. Shows the currently active stage. Okay. Stage indicator is glowing purple. That's this. Okay. Yeah, I've encountered this before, right? I've talked about heavily iterated upon games that increasingly cater to the existing hardcore audience and don't really ever come back and like change the new player experience at all. Warframe, Factorio, Path of Exile, right? Big round instrument is the nav ball. Proper death-free flight. Limiter, vertical speed indicator, atmosphere gauges. Okay. Probably gonna have to just like play it. This is definitely one of the most like text-heavy tutorials I've encountered. Staging stacking to the indicator for your parachute. Background will change color to indicate. This is like, so I'm really bad at editing when I post stuff in my Discord, instead of just sending out a paragraph, I send like 8 paragraphs, and it's way too fucking wordy, and I hate it about myself. This tutorial is like I wrote it. Like, you already know that. Safe, risky, and unsafe to deploy. Arm deployed and cut shredded. Okay, I'm not, but that's okay. I'll just move on. Unlock the flight controls and you'll be clear for launch. Press escape to pause the game. Pause, you can restart the flight or end the tutorial. Space when you're ready to launch. See whether the crew are enjoying the trip in the lower right corner. It's cool. How do I transition into stage 2? Or is this just going to happen automatically? I can see that being pretty satisfying once you get there. Okay. Space again? Space is launch and advanced stages, basically. Valentina's gonna get sick here. Imagine this is the kind of game you give to somebody who wants to become an actual rocket scientist. Seemed to work. So what am I actually doing when I adjust pitch, roll, and yaw? I assume that's abstracted from real-world mechanics, right? Like, you don't actually have that level of control? Are there, like, mini thrusters on the side or something? Is Kerbal Space Program 2 supposed to be, like, an improvement on this, where it contains all of the same mechanics, but it's just improved throughout from the ground up? Or is it like a true sequel that it's doing completely new and different things? Well, this is a tutorial. I think they're just showing us what the pilot looks like. Click EVA. Interesting. Reaction wheels in the main pod section. Okay. I think we get it. Intermediate construction. B. me see if I can adjust the pop-ups. Maybe it's only a problem in this screen that they kind of end up on the edge. A little more complex craft. The accounting department is always happy when we save on time. Okay, so you can like save and then start from that in the future. Interesting. Radial symmetry. Okay, I think I understand. Maybe not, it won't let me go forward here. Don't save. No, we started a little early, Doom Bob, sorry. Previous game ended early. Remove the flea motor. Okay. Sorry. Thousand. Yeah, just set it to 0.75. Corresponds to an altitude on a curve of about 2 kilometers. So normally you just have to like stick with this until it's right, I guess. Is Kerbin supposed to be Earth-like? Give the ship some additional purpose by attaching a science experiment. Mystery goo containment unit. Switch to the science tab. Mystery goo containment. Know what color the goo is. Earth with scaled down mass, okay. Yeah, I don't think I should be looking at parachute right-click options at all at the beginning of the game. This makes me really interested to see Kerbal Space Program 2 if it's supposed to redo all of this. I'm glad to see this one first so I can appreciate how it's improved. Especially if that's coming out soon. And it's kind of the same game, but more feature complete. We have a symmetry tool. These buttons control symmetry down here. Press the symmetry button to cycle through the different symmetry modes. Interesting. Set this to 2x. Is that 2x? Because it doesn't actually have a name. Assume so, looks like it. Place them near the nose. Craft will be too heavy to survive re-entry. Couplers can be found in the coupling tab. Split the craft when we no longer need the lower parts. Okay, coupling. Add it to the bottom. Stack decouplers have arrows. Arrows shows which side is the side that decouples. It's pointing up towards the pod, which is the default. Okay. I feel like I need to do the tutorial first just to have some sense of structure. If you just throw me into the sandbox, I can't function. I think my brain will collapse. Even if this is too much detail right now, like I wouldn't even have noticed the symmetry button or understood why they cared about it. So help me figure out all the UI bits, at least. And at least some argument, like I think I understand what this thing does, for example. And I get why we want to load balance the two sides of it. It makes sense. So my, the way I read is generally pretty effective. I kind of like scan a paragraph and I pick up the like what it's trying to tell me, and it lets me read really fast, but sometimes I'll miss something, like on that earlier thing where it said that I had to delete, you know, the thing that was under the pod in order to be able to click on the next button. I'm finding that I'm really having to slow down and read slowly to make sure I get like the important information. 5 of these tanks get us into space. Place the first tank on the rocket. You can duplicate that by holding left alt and clicking on the tank. Add 5 FLT 100 fuel tanks to the vessel. Okay. Fuel tanks. Okay, that's a helpful shortcut. Got it. I guess maybe I'll go in the sandbox once I've seen the tutorials that explain each of these tabs over here and all the on-screen buttons. Switch over to the engines tab. Swivel engine, different from the flea we used. Liquid engine. Liquid fuel and oxidizer. Is this, so what all does this game abstract? I mean, obviously it abstracts construction. Am I gonna have to do like calculus rate of change calculations to figure out how much fuel I need? How it's gonna affect the weight of the rocket as it burns? Maybe not as speedily as someone of my caliber. Thank you. Give this rocket better stability. Add some fins near the bottom of the rocket. Fins can be found in aerodynamics. Yeah, I wonder like how much of this game's intended core loop is like just brute force changing numbers until it works. Set it to 4x. Okay. That. I do like the symmetry option, that's nice. Turn on angle snap. Ah, that's nice. We're on the last tank, right? Here. Okay. This right here. I see. So I could see that change by adding or removing fuel and kind of brute force my way to an answer without needing to actually do the calculation. Okay, I think I got it. Let's move on. Suborbital flight. This is cool to give you more of an intuition for everything that goes into rocket science, right? I guess maybe the tutorial being super dense is coming from a point of view of like, if you're already invested in learning how this works, you don't care about an overwhelming UI, right? I assume that this is like positively generous in how much information it gives you and how abstracted a lot of the mechanics are. Okay. Short suborbital over the water to the east. Nice arcing path that ensures a gentle, survivable re-entry. Straight up then straight down is not so good for survival. Set up the pink target indicator on the nav ball as aim point. Yeah. And it's like sim in the sense of like Microsoft Flight Simulator almost, as opposed to sim in the sense of like, you know, City Skylines or SimCity. Yeah. A bit of time to discuss some other things. Interesting. You can think of there being like, when you're describing a sim, there's like someone who's literally in the field and would use it to learn important lessons about their actual real life job type sims. There's people who are just kind of into civil engineering and might enjoy like building a town in a game like SimCity or City Skylines, right? So where does your game rest on that axis? Like how abstracted are things? Left shift, left control, Z and X. See the throttle on the side. Max. Cut off. Stability augmentation system. Sickness avoidance scheme. Tries to stop the ship from spinning around. Auto torque drive compensator. Is this a real life thing? Or is this just for your own sanity in the game? Oh, I believe it for sure. I guarantee you that anybody that's seriously looking to get into rocket physics and doing this kind of science like has to play this game. Like it seems borderline mandatory. Just like real pilots actually use Microsoft Flight Simulator, right? Throttle down for launch. Set your throttle to 2/3. Okay. It's T. I think I'm just in the wrong spot. Oh, that's 2/3. I thought this was 2/3 and then the red was max. Okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Let's just ask the Kerbal Space Program developers to solve the two-body problem. Yeah, I've never played this before. Makes sense, Silverdan. Buy it. It's a warning where you want to pause the game to read. That sounds great. So the flight controls will be clear to launch. Press escape to pause the game. Enable the target marker on the nav ball. Double check your throttle set to 2/3. Space when you're ready. Start turning at 50 meters per second. I'm gonna die so fast here. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm following the pink. Bottle up to full power. Press escape and revert flight to try again. Yeah. This is an engineering game. Good enough approximations are what matter. Pink is the target. Green is where you're currently going. Yellow is where you're trying to go. So the SAS is what's causing it to, like, fight me a little bit so that I don't start spinning out of control. Okay, so I want the green circle to be around the pink circle. It's hard to, like, read. It said to pause, but I can't pause. I don't know when to pause. All right, detailed info. Yeah, I gotcha. I'm pulling on it. Your target indicator to align with your velocity vector. They'll minimize drag by turning the small side of the vehicle into the airflow. Around here, you'll see the nav ball. I've set your target indicator to align with your velocity vector. Did something change? Or has that been true from the beginning? Is that unique to this tutorial? That will minimize drag by turning the smallest side of the vehicle into the airflow. Sure, this makes sense to folks that already have the hindsight of understanding how this works, but that's just a big concept to just throw at me. Did it change something? Do I have control over that in the future? See the nav velocity indicator auto switch from surface to orbit. So he didn't activate something. That's just an automatic feature of the nav ball when I get into orbit. Okay. So he didn't do something. When he says I did it, that implied that there's like a mechanic, there's like a switch that I can manually flip to do this in the future. I gotcha. Okay. Auto switch. Switch back to surface by clicking on it until it says surface again. I guess I paused a little too early. There's some flickering flames near the end of our burn. Switch to the map key. But I can't do that while paused, can I? Mistake. Here the atmosphere will go over what you can do in space. Am I already like so far out that I can't win now? This one, target. Makes sense due to the lack of thrust. Inside the astronaut complex, the KSC, you can train our Kerbals to be able to spacewalk. We'll do that on this flight. Experiments. Play with the goo canisters by right-clicking on them. But it's behind the tutorial window. Okay. Serve mystery goo. Pumped into a sphere and has become brittle. Oh, I do like the data transmission. That's neat. Okay. Atmosphere. Gotcha. Oh god, it's a detailed info, but I was looking at the fuck. I don't know what it said. Can I dismiss this pop-up somehow? Experiment, keep experiment. Not like a close button. Thanks. Stage discard. So that means just press space. Turn SAS off and let the air. Okay. I love how janky this is, that we're just going to have a ton of text and we're going to manually tell you to pause instead of like pausing the tutorial for you. I'm actually really interested in seeing Kerbal Space Program 2. You're now re-entering the atmosphere. Keep all hands and feet inside the pod. Watch the parachute icon and wait for the right time to open the chute. You set the chute to not semi-deploy until 0.75 atmospheres of pressure. Arm the chute now. Stage the chute by pressing space. Okay. No worries. I'm happy to play the first one first so that I'll appreciate what's going on in the second one. Assuming the second one is the same game. Oh god. Turn that back on. Yeah, adjust these parameters during flight. Check the sliders now. Okay, yeah, they're right. Don't touch the pressure slider or bad things will happen. No less than 1,000. Okay. Hang on until about 2 kilometers and watch the parachute trigger itself. You don't have a heat shield. You don't need one because this is a gentle flight. Heat shield would make things more dangerous. Okay. Look how happy Jebediah is. Safe to deploy. Unsafe. Well, that's nice that it tells you that. I think when I pressed space earlier, that triggered a fast forward. That's cool. I guess under normal circumstances, you would like cut the parachute somewhere close to the water. Maybe only after you land. I guess we'll find out in a second. Nice. Launch. Pull your vessel into space. Orient yourself and land. Use revert. Going for orbit. End scenario. I'm currently having Twitch Comcast issues. I don't know what it is. I'm going to pause. Hey, so I've been having Comcast issues for like the last 30 minutes. I don't know if it's Comcast. I don't know if it's Twitch. Whatever. I can't stream right now. So if you're watching in the future on YouTube, I discussed this a little bit with the person who put this on the schedule, Dark Doom Bob. We're thinking we're going to do the rest of this with Kerbal Space Program 2 when it comes out. So I am very excited to see KSP2, see how it improves on this tutorial. I'm interested in this game despite being bad at it. If it turns out that KSP2 is meant for people that are already familiar with the first game, I think we'll play more of 1 at that time. But we might not see more Kerbal until after the second game comes out. We'll see you then.